Hey guys, happy, what is it? Thursday. Yeah, that's what it is. Baby Friday around here. Welcome to the Fox 5 Live Zone. I'm your host, Guy Lambert. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up on the show today, another power-packed day. Yes, we're talking about the Sean P. Diddy Combs sex crimes trial. In this case, his ex-girlfriend Cassie back on the stand. However, the defense now cross-examining her. We'll break it all down. Maryland Governor Wes Moore says he has a major announcement. What it is, we don't know. It will happen during this show. We'll take you there live. And it's wedding season, which means many of you plan to attend weddings. However, we'll tell you what not to do if you happen to be a guest. All that and more coming up on the show. But first, how about we talk? All right, well, we'll get to Tucker Barnes in just a minute with weather, but first let's take you to the UAE, where Mr. Trump now arriving. He is the second serving American president to visit the UAE, the final stop of his first major trip of his second term. Earlier, he was in Qatar, the largest U.S. military facility in the Middle East. Well, paid a visit to several troops there and addressed troops in a rally-like atmosphere. As you can see, it's very festive yet again in the UAE. Earlier this morning, before traveling there, the president participated in a breakfast in Doha with business leaders before saying goodbye to the Qatar emir. At breakfast, Trump said he did not think Russian President Vladimir Putin would go to talks in Turkey with Ukraine if he were not there. Let's go ahead and take a listen in as the president yet again arrives in the UAE. All right, there you have it. Yet again, President Trump arriving at the UAE. AI is likely to be the focus of the president's trip while there. We can tell you that UAE leaders seek U.S. assistance to make their nation a global leader in artificial intelligence. As we have seen throughout the president's trip, once arriving, he is now meeting and greeting with a number of dignitaries. Joining us to discuss this and so much more, hey, our friend is back, Andrea KAYE from the Andrea KAYE Show, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, Andrea.
Always great to be with you.
All right, we're taking a live look at President Trump. He has officially arrived at the UAE, his last stop on his Middle East tour. For the most part, many would argue that it has been somewhat of a successful tour. What say you?
I say it's been a very successful tour. I'm not sure if the UAE had a mobile McDonald's there for him or welcomed him with troops carrying American flags. But look, there's no other way to characterize this trip to the Middle East than him making MAGA deals that are going to bring trillions of dollars, thousands and thousands of jobs to the United States. And look, I understand, as somebody who's been concerned about the rise of Islamic terrorism around the world since 9/11, I understand that there are criticisms that are rightful to be made against Qatar and Saudi Arabia and these countries over there in terms of their treatment of women and ties to terrorism. But Trump was there on an economic mission, and it was a success.
Yeah, a success for the UAE as well. Yet again, the president making an announcement that, well, they will team up with the U.S., with UAE rather, to make them the home of all artificial intelligence. Really interesting. That announcement made earlier today. We'll bring it back here to the good old U.S. of A. In this case, we know that the Trump administration, well, it's hearing oral arguments with the Supreme Court. At issue, Trump's birthright citizenship order. The main question for justices is whether or not the lower courts overstepped their authority by blocking that January 20th order on a nationwide basis. It has been somewhat contentious, if you will. How do you think this is going to play out?
I can tell you how I would like it to play out. I would really like the Supreme Court to actually hear once and for all and weigh in once and for all on Trump's right as the executive branch, as commander-in-chief, as the one who's head of foreign policy. His plenary powers be respected as the executive, for the Supreme Court to weigh in and say these lower courts have no overreaching power over the executive branch. And when it comes to birthright citizenship, I would like them to actually weigh in on birthright citizenship, not just on the power of the lower courts. I feel like we're always like taking these little bites at the apple and not really getting to the core issue. And I get that why John Roberts and his court, they're always worried about a perception by the American people, but I would ask them to do their job, and that is to uphold the U.S. Constitution. And if there is any gray area of which anybody is trying to find in the 14th Amendment to justify an illegal alien invasion of our country, let me remind everybody, the Democrats always say that the Constitution is a living document, that it should be modified according to progress. That in and of itself would justify Trump ending birthright citizenship, because this is a 90-10 issue for Americans who elected him to end this invasion and to deport the illegals. And for another argument is that for the constitutionalist, that if there is something that's vague, like maybe the 14th Amendment, you got to go back at that time and think about what the founders were going through, what our originalists were looking at when they came up with the amendment. And it was that the 14th Amendment was to provide citizenship for slaves and their children, not for every Tom, Dick, and Harry who wants to crawl across the border pregnant or with a pregnant woman. That's just my interpretation.
Yeah, it's really explosive with regard to what's happening right now within the Supreme Court, and yet we all will await to see what ruling will be rendered. Let's move on with regard to the House now releasing its draft for Trump's tax, dubbed the Big Beautiful Bill. Within it, we now know no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, Andrea, 100% bonus depreciation restored and extended, standard deduction for seniors, and child tax credit for both increased. Anything stand out to you with regard to this new bill?
Yeah, well, just in what you mentioned right there, Guy, this to me is an abandonment by the Republican Party on one of Trump's key campaign issues, and that was no tax on Social Security for seniors. This bill is not beautiful enough for me, Guy. It's not beautiful at all for me, because one of the excuses for this Republican Party to not honor a campaign pledge to our seniors who are suffering so much economically in this country is that they're worried that these tax cuts leave us with, not enough revenue in terms of spending and the debt that we have of 36 to almost $37 trillion. But yet these same Republicans not wanting to honor this pledge to our seniors are digging their heels in to continue to fund at taxpayers' expense transgender surgeries, what the American people said they absolutely do not want. Republican Party, do your job and fulfill the wishes of the American people when it comes to economics.
Yeah, yet again, it's all about the almighty dollar, and something that we will have to keep a very close eye on with regard to that bill. Let's move on to the war between Russia and Ukraine. We now know that neither world leader with regard to Vladimir Putin and Zelensky will actually attend a meeting in Turkey. This after Trump said he wasn't planning on going either. Now, Zelensky has said that he won't meet any Russian representative in Turkey outside of Putin. In essence, he said this is all phony. Are we going to see an end to this, Andrea?
Well, that's kind of two different questions, whether or not Trump should have gone to the meeting or whether or not we're going to have an end to it. Because look, at this point, Trump has already met with Zelensky, had him here at the White House when Zelensky showed his hiney, as we say in the South, and proceeded to disrespect the country and our president. Look, this is not our war. And for Trump should not go to this meeting. And I think what Trump should say at this point is, look, we're done. You're on your own. Zelensky's the one that has the most to lose. That's not being Putin's puppet. This is not our war, and we have to put America first. And the second that he says to him, we're out, you've got until Friday such and such time, Zelensky, to come to the table, or we're out. Then we need to leave if he doesn't come to the table.
Key point I took away from this conversation thus far is show our hiney. I'll have to use that one yet again sometime in the near future. We'll end with this, Andrea, and that is President Trump earlier today actually appeared to indicate that the U.S. in essence has reached a trade deal with India. This could be a big deal, by the way, which India is willing to literally charge us no tariff. Should this happen, yet again, another major notch on the president's belt.
Absolutely. Look, Marco Rubio had already announced that a framework had been reached with India on a trade deal. And I think but for what was going on with Pakistan and looking like maybe a war, we would have even had this sooner. And then now we've got the UK deal. We've got this deal coming. We've had the movement with China. I think what we're going to see, Guy, is a domino effect of a lot more great trade deals coming. And these are major wins, and even though the stock market is not the economy, we see that being reflected in a good movement in the market.
Yeah, no matter what side of the aisle you happen to sit on, we all want the economy to do well. I think we can all agree with that. Andrea Kaye, good to see you. Of course, folks that want to get a chance to check you out, how would one go about to do so, Andrea?
Just go to AndreaKShow.com, AndreaKShow.com. Thanks for having me, Guy. Always fun.
All right. Thanks for joining us. And yet again, I'll have to keep the hiney remark in mind. All right, guys. We're going to bring it back home. In this case, take you back to the Supreme Court justices, if you will. We know the Supreme Court now hearing oral arguments today on the president's attempt to restrict birthright citizenship. Let's go ahead and take a listen in with what's unfolding right before our very eyes.
It admits it's limited to whether it's entitled to complete relief. But how about your organization? You sort of answered it, but I wanted to pin you down on that.
No,
Do you believe that associational organizations can seek class action?
I believe our individual plaintiffs certainly can.
Yes, there's no question.
Yeah, I am nervous about the government's suggestion that it's going to oppose our class certification motion if we were to file one. I mean, class certification can be very discovery intensive. It could be the sort of thing that really delays our plaintiffs from getting the relief that they seek.
Thank you.
Justice Kagan?
I guess what I worry about here, Ms. Corcoran, is that this case is very different from a lot of our nationwide injunction cases in which many of us have expressed frustration at the way district courts are doing their business. And, you know, the typical way in which that frustration emerges is that legal questions are hard and they're complicated, and different courts would decide them differently. And instead, because of the forum selection process, a party goes to one place. You know, in the first Trump administration, it was all done in San Francisco. And then in the next administration, it was all done in Texas.
Right.
And And there is a big problem that is created by that mechanism. And that leads to the questions to you and to General Feigenbaum, which is like, you know, your third buckets, which are, oh, if it's like super important, or if it's quintessentially national, or whatever the way, you know, is not going to solve our problem for that set of cases, which is not this case. This case, what's problematic about it is that the courts keep deciding the same way, and nobody really thinks that the lower courts are going to do anything different. Right. And you know, for that reason, it does present the catch me if you can problem that Justice Jackson said, and the problem of how are we ever going to get a case here. But our general case is not like that, and I just want you to sort of comment on it.
Yeah, I'd say first that the government's proposal of channeling through Rule 23 does nothing to solve anything you just described. I think the limiting principles that I was proposing, which again was just me trying to reflect back to the court, kind of the through lines that it's been identifying, are sufficiently concrete that if this court were to articulate them, it would cut back on the number of universal injunctions. Is it a facial challenge? Does it involve a fundamental constitutional right? Right, those are concrete questions. And then I would point to, you know, Justice Kavanaugh's Poe concurrence. I think, you know, vertical stare decisis is going to be important here. When courts enter these sorts of injunctions, they are immediately appealable to the courts of appeal. So if there are any district courts that are kind of getting over their skis on these, it's correctable by the courts of appeals.
Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh.
Some of your concerns about this court being involved, because I'm not sure I really understand that. When a president or an administration enacts some major new rule, the question ultimately, and it's legally challenged, ultimately it'll be a year or two from now, it'll get here and we'll make a final judgment. But the interim status of that rule, as this case illustrates, and many others, vaccine mandate, eviction moratorium, go down the list, they're really important whether they're in effect for that year or two. And I guess I don't know why you should be concerned or we should be concerned about this court playing a role in this.
Oh, I don't have concerns about that. I was responding to General Sauer's point that this has become pathological in the number of universal injunctions that are making its way onto the court's emergency docket.
All right, yet again, you have been listening to the Supreme Court hearing oral arguments on the president's attempt to restrict birthright citizenship. That will continue throughout the afternoon, and we will continue to monitor that right here on the Live Zone. Speaking of court cases, now the latest on the Sean Diddy Combs sex crimes trial. This afternoon, his ex-girlfriend, yes, Cassie, well, she's taken the stand yet again. This time, she's being cross-examined by the defense. His lawyers are expected to challenge her credibility while claiming the pair had a mutual toxic relationship. Joining us now to discuss all this and so much more is Madeline Somerville, jury consultant and body language expert back here on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, Madeline.
Good to see you too, Guy. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so it's been about, 20 minutes or so since I got my last update, but let me tell you what I got thus far, and hopefully you can add to that. We know that before Cassie's cross-examination this morning, well, the judge and lawyers had to address a text message issue. Prosecutors raised concern about the defense bringing in text messages that reference Cassie having sex with someone outside of Diddy and/or an escort. Apparently, the defense attorney is trying to show that she used a more vulgar vocabulary. What's the point of that?
Yeah, so when it comes to using someone's words against them, right? Taking the words that are written out of court and presenting to them in court, you have to be really delicate because, first of all, it's technically hearsay until it's established that that's what she said, and she has to put the context around it, right? And they could be attempting at this point, the defense could be attempting to sway the jury a little bit after they've probably developed a more sympathetic vibe towards her. They might be trying to sway their perception of her a little bit by showing that maybe she had more relationships than this. Maybe she hasn't been completely honest about the love that she was talking about she had for Diddy. But they have to tread very lightly there because I think the jury already likes her very much.
Interesting you say that. We know that the person cross-examining her happens to be a woman. We also know that upon arriving today, Diddy, in essence, did the heart-shaped sign, if you will, to the mother of one of his lawyers. He also double-tapped his chest when he looked at his two sons. We can tell you that his two twin daughters, yet again, are not there. They attended the prom last night in Los Angeles. It's interesting. You pointed out that you think that the jury perhaps already likes Cassie. With that being said, and we now know that a woman is cross-examining her, is that something that they thought about prior to this actually getting underway, to have her do just that?
Most certainly. If I were advising the defense, I would absolutely say that they should have a female attorney cross-examine her. The worst thing that they could do would be bully her, make it look like they're trying to bully her into saying things, because she is by definition a victim in this situation, whether the defense likes it or not. So the worst thing that they can do is put her in a situation where, there might be a more gruff attitude from a man who might approach her, and then it looks like she's being bullied again, which would cause the jury to take up for her. So a woman's touch, I think, is more appropriate in this situation.
We also know that they being the defense, have put forth emails that Cassie actually wrote Diddy, quote, "It makes me so happy to see you. I'm a very lucky woman. I miss you so much. I'd fly wherever you needed me, whenever. I love you," unquote. Yet again, what are they trying to show?
I think they are trying to, personally, I think they're trying to complicate things. The defense is known for dropping hints and trying to get the prosecution to chase rabbits, right? Because all the defense has to do in this case is create reasonable doubt, right? That's the goal. And you only need one juror to have reasonable doubt here. So if they're able to feed any of the perceptions that the jurors have already developed along the way, whether it's about, whether she truly loved him or not, whether this was consensual or not, they're going to try to feed all of those avenues so that jurors can kind of engage in confirmation bias and pick the facts that they feel support what their conclusion might already be.
Yeah, Madeline, I'm hoping you can stress yet again what this case is all about, because so many folks up until this moment are still confused, myself included, when you look at it day to day with regard to what's going on. This is not an issue as to whether or not he's guilty of domestic abuse. The defense has stated, hey, we're going to take that. We know that happens to have been the case. It's an issue, yet again, of consent. And with that being said, from what you've seen thus far, which side has really done a good job of presenting just that?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking that question, because I appreciate the opportunity to direct viewers' attention towards what the jurors are actually going to pay attention to, right? Which is, has the prosecution established the required elements of the crime that they're accusing him of, such that they should conclude that he's guilty, right? And what are those crimes? That essentially, is he guilty of running a criminal enterprise and having sex with his partner? Obviously is not anything that would fit under that frame, but the prosecution has kind of put context around all the sexual activity, and told stories like, for example, when Cassie was addressing the issue of the people who worked for Diddy putting drugs in people's drinks, trying to allude to a criminal enterprise, right? Or when they walked in and saw her crying on the floor and didn't do anything. They're trying to establish that it's a business around all of these things. And I think that the prosecution has done a good job of doing that. And so it's the defense's job now to undo any points that the prosecution has scored along the way. And the avenue that the defense is going to take is going to depend on which points they think the prosecution drove home the strongest.
Yeah, and with regard to the prosecution, we know that she happened to be on the stand for some 9 hours, that ending yesterday. Back on the stand today, but as I stated earlier, this time being cross-examined by the defense. Typically, how long is that process?
It's about as long as it's going right now. That's not too uncommon. I think they're gonna have to tread lightly, like I said, and so I don't think that they should overstay their welcome. And by that I mean I don't think the defense should take too long with Cassie, because the longer you put her up there, if the jury is taking up for her emotionally, you don't want to exhaust her and then have to take responsibility for that. So I'm hoping that the cross will be done by the end of the day, so that we get a fair outcome, and the jury doesn't feel like they need to take up for somebody who's being bullied.
And as we wrap up, Madeline, anything in particular thus far stand out to you with regard to this trial?
Yeah, so just alluding to a little bit before what I was talking about the criminal enterprise. So I think the stories that they've told are interesting. But yesterday, I was really shocked actually at the level of graphic detail of the violent encounters that the two had. I was kind of shocked as a lawyer. My lawyer brain started firing on all cylinders because normally if it's not relevant, if the fact that the evidence that you're talking about isn't relevant to the crime that you're trying to prove, you're not allowed to bring that evidence in. And so when they brought in evidence of like when Cassie wanted to go home and visit her mother and she couldn't, or when she had the issue with Kid Cudi's car, right? Those seem like those aren't necessarily relevant to the crime that they're trying to prove. So I was kind of shocked that the judge let that evidence in. And what I would like to know as a lawyer watching this case is what creative, excellent argument did the prosecution make in order to get all of that evidence in? Because it obviously is going to encourage people on the jury, encourage jurors to say, okay, well, maybe he is the kind of person who could have been in charge of a criminal enterprise. So that's the lawyer catnip that was presented for me.
Well, if it's coming from you, it's also well, because you do also well with regard to that realm. Yet again, we have been speaking with Madeline Somerville. She is a jury consultant and body language expert, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, Madeline.
You too. Thanks so much.
No doubt. All right, guys, we'll get another report with regard to what's happening with the Diddy case at about 1:20 right here on the Live Zone. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
I hope you enjoyed it. It's an amazing culture. Thank you. Thank you. It's okay. All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Well, if you haven't heard, let me be the first to tell you. Did you know that May marks the start of the busiest moving season of the year, and home sales surge throughout the summer months? That's why it's also important to recognize that it's National Moving Month. Now, let me tell you, moving isn't just a logistical challenge. It's one of the most stressful events of one's lifetime, alongside death and divorce. No matter the size or distance of a move, making a smooth transition is always key. I gotta tell you, I am so glad that we are now welcoming Mr. Ross Sapir, I should say. He is a roadway moving expert and roadway moving founder and CEO, and kind enough to join us right here on the Live Zone. Ross, good to see you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
All right, I got to tell you, Ross, when I just read this, my anxiety just skyrocketed. I got to tell you, when it comes to moving, I absolutely hate it. Quick story, I actually lost a girlfriend because I refused to help her move.
Oh, man. Could hire the mover.
Yeah. And so with that being said, I got to tell you, I salute you, sir, for all that what you do. Happy National Moving Month. And for those of us that are hearing about it for the first time, it is so important that we know the right steps to take in order to go about to make that transition.
All right. Yeah. So hopefully I can add value. Yes, you're right. May is the National Moving Month. It actually kicks out the season, and which means demand surge, transaction surge, military moving happening, a lot of families moving during that time because kids are out of school. And that's your time now to do your research and book early. That's my number one advice. Book early, but do not rush the process of booking.
You know,
do your research.
It's such an honor to speak with you. Why do I say that? Well, because I think our viewers need to know that you happen to be the official mover of the New York Yankees. And so that means you guys got your stuff together, believe you me. With that being said, you have really focused on the emotional culture and performance within this business. Do tell, what does it mean to do all of that?
It means that you, from the get-go, when you hire people, when you transact, when you do the moving, you got to focus on EQ rather than IQ. And what we constantly telling our guys is that we are not a moving company, we're a hospitality company. So everybody can move you, but it could be a really bad day, or it could be a fantastic, wonderful, joyful day. So what we strive to do is create moving as a celebration day. Although it's stressful, almost all the time it's for great reasons. So by applying hospitality fundamentals, you create much better experience than just moving itself. That's pretty much our secret sauce.
All right. Well, don't spill it all. We want to make sure that folks hire you in this case. So Ross, tell me, is there a perfect box? Because I'm thinking back to the last time I moved, and yet again, I'm starting to feel this anxiety of packing up everything. But I remember certain boxes, actually, they would collapse and or fold a certain way. They weren't as sturdy as others. Is there one perhaps that you recommend?
Totally. Yeah. I think, you know, what I can tell you is what I'm not recommending. If you are moving longer distances, do not use Amazon boxes or Home Depot boxes, all those relatively cheap. There's also a trick to that. Every box you buy from a moving company or from other stores, if you flip it on the bottom, you will see a stamp. And that stamp is the weight that this box can carry. So every box actually goes through a test. So if the stamp say 15 pounds, do not load it with 200 books, and then it's going to be 50 pounds. So I think that's number one. Second, try to find professional moving boxes. It's easy. There's moving companies everywhere. Just vet some, go online and buy. And don't forget, label your boxes with some colors. You probably going to have a better moving day. You won't lose your girlfriend, like happened to you, then find everything when you need it.
Oh, well, Ross, I can tell you several things. One, I think I'm not the only one that's guilty of this, but who reads the directions anymore? I mean, you just get a box and you throw stuff in there. So to your point, shame on me, and I need to do a better job of that. And that's why my box perhaps was not as sturdy. And then two, yes, you know what? I typically just take that little marker and write on the top of it in handwriting that I can no longer read once it arrives at the new place. And so I truly understand the value of making sure that you label the boxes correctly as well. With that being said, is that what separates you from, let's say, your competition?
Oh, everybody have boxes, right? And first, we are great, but there's a lot of other great movers out there. So I'm sure people can find a great mover today using the right tools to do their vetting and their research. What I can tell you that separate us and why we are successful, why we moved over 20,000 people last year is our people. It have nothing to do with me or this beautiful office way over here. It's the culture and the way we do business as a team. So at the end of the day, what really matters is the 3 or 4 movers that show up at the door when you move. And that's what's special about us. Our people are incredible, they're amazing, they're hospitality-centric, which create a celebration and a beautiful moving day.
Yet again, it appears that I will have to get your telephone number, sir, because you will be getting a call from me when I plan to move sometime in the near future. We are celebrating all things during National Moving Month, and I've been speaking with Mr. Ross Sapir. He is the Roadway Moving's founder and CEO, kind enough to join us right here on the Live Zone. Thanks a lot for those tips, sir. Truly appreciate that.
Awesome.
Congratulations yet again.
Thank you so much.
No doubt.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, we'll take a quick break. On the flip side of that break, producer Chris joins us with some of the sizzling topics coming up next, right here on the Live Zone. All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Producer Chris joining us with some of the sizzling topics right here on the LZ. Good to see you, my man.
Listen, we are only in May. It theoretically should be baseball season. The Caps, Game 5 tonight at home. But we are here talking football.
Let's do it, baby.
Because the NFL just released the full schedule for the 2025-2026 season. Now, let's start off with the hometown team, the Burgundy and Gold, the Commanders, and they are going to be front and center nationwide, not just here in the DMV, but nationwide this season. And this is not a shock because you may remember Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, was just here on 2 separate occasions to talk not only about the new future home of the Commanders right here in Washington, D.C., but also that NFL draft coming here to Washington as well. So it should be as no surprise that they are going to have 5 primetime games this season. 5 primetime games this season. And not only that, we also have a Christmas Day game right here at Northwest Stadium against, of all teams, the Cowboys. Talk about a Christmas present for fans. So we've got some late nights. We've got a Christmas present. We have an international trip to to Madrid to take on Miami. It's going to be a good year for these new look Commanders. Jaden Daniels, 2nd year behind center. A lot of excitement for this team and this season. It all starts in September with the New York Giants, another division rival. Listen, they have been the lowly New York Giants for a while, but they made some efforts in the offseason. We'll have to, you never want to count your chickens before they hatch, but hopefully starting the season with a W.
Well, I'll say it. They stink.
We're
going to take that game.
Exactly. I have no problem with that as a fan of a different NFC East division.
I looked at the schedule. Some games like, I don't know. The others, it's like, okay, that's a shoo-in. But yet again, it's the NFL.
It's the
and
NFL.
You can never just say, it's an automatic win, although I
Any
just said that.
given Sunday, as they say. Listen, this sort of announcement, the schedule release has become a thing of its own, especially when social media gets involved. You may remember one of the best of all time to ever do it was the Tennessee Titans, and they went up to people on the street and they showed them a logo, asked them to guess what the team was. They would flash up, what that person said and the date of the game. And it has just taken on new life from there. And some of the best we put together for you. The first, the Baltimore Ravens. They went Severance themed with this, releasing what they called their mysterious and important schedule. Next up, we had the Broncos. The Broncos went full rodeo themed this year. They recruited some kids and some sheep, and the results are hilarious with a disclaimer right there. Next up, we had the LA Rams. Look, LA, home to so many celebrities, so of course, I put so many things on your tag board. They recruited actress Brenda Song, who you may remember from the show Running Point, also married to Macaulay Culkin. She announced their schedule with some other famous faces popping up throughout as well. However, the gold standard may have gone to the LA Chargers. What they did is they summoned the spirit of Minecraft, which is red hot thanks to the movie. Kids everywhere love playing it. Their entire schedule release was Minecraft themed. A lot of little Easter eggs in there too. Now, I will say, the Colts tried to do that as well. Didn't necessarily go as well for them. They ended up having to take theirs down as a result. But you know what they say, the screenshots live forever.
I love it. We're talking football already. I'm really excited about this season.
I am too. I think a lot of people are. And the league just keeps growing in popularity. And with all of these streaming games, all of these holiday games, games on different days of the week, it's just going to grow and grow and grow. Speaking of streaming.
Okay, real quick, we were talking off air that so the Christmas
Day game.
Not gonna. I'm a huge fan, but it's just too
I will
cold.
watch at home, and I will watch with bated breath to see who is going to be the halftime show performer. But as of right now,
now that might change it, Chris. Okay, I forgot about that.
Yeah, exactly. See, I just whispered the magic words.
Well, speaking of whispering magic words, let's see what the president is whispering as he pays visit to the UAE. Let's take a listen in.
This friendship
لمصلحة البلدين
for the benefit
والشعبين.
of both our nations and peoples,
وجودكم هنا اليوم إمارات.
etched in the collective memory of the
هما
UAE.
الدكتور بات وماريان
They are
كينيدي
Pat and Marianne Kennedy.
الذين جاءوا إلى مدينة العين
They arrived in Elaine
في آخر الخمسينات
in late 50s,
وعملا في
working
ظروف صعبة جدا
under challenging conditions
حيث كان يتوفى
at a time when
طفلين
up to
واحد.
1 in 2 infants,
وكانت هناك وفاة من كل 4 أمهات
and in 4
خلال
and
الولادة
1 in 4 mothers died during childbirth.
وأسس الطبيبان الأمريكيان مستشفى الواحة
They founded Oasis
الذي
Hospital,
لعب دورا رئيسيا في تاريخ الرعاية
which
الصحية
played a pivotal
في دولة
role
الإمارات.
in the development of healthcare in the
وبعد
UAE.
وصولهما ببضعة أشهر
A few months after their arrival, Mr. President,
ولدت في هذا
I was born
المستشفى
in the same hospital that these 2 American doctors
الذي
founded.
أسسه هذا الطبيبان الأمريكيان وتقديرا لجهودهما
In
في
recognition
مجتمع الإمارات
of their
تم
contributions,
منحهما جائزة أبو ظبي في دورتها الأولى
they were awarded the Abu
2005.
Dhabi Award in
كما
its
جرى
first
تغيير
edition in
اسم المستشفى
2005.
في عام
And
2019
in 2019,
إلى
the
مستشفى
hospital was renamed
تكريما لهما.
Kenneth Hospital in their
وعلى
honor.
ذلك استقبلت بهذه المناسبة عائلتهما في أبو ظبي
And their family was hosted in Abu Dhabi in gratitude for their service
من خدمات
to
للشعب
the,
دولة
to the
الإمارات.
people of the UAE.
فخامة الرئيس هناك شراكة قوية بين دولة الإمارات
Mr. President,
والولايات المتحدة
the UAE and the United States share a strong development-focused
وأخذت هذه
partnership.
الشراكة دفعة نوعية
This
وغير
partnership
مسبوقة
has taken a significant leap forward
خاصة من مجيئكم في البيت الأبيض
since you assumed office,
خاصة في مجالات الاقتصاد
particularly in
الجديد
the areas
والطاقة
of the new economy,
والتكنولوجيا
energy,
المتقدمة
advanced technology,
والذكاء الاصطناعي
artificial intelligence,
والصناعة
and industry.
ومما يؤكد على ذلك مخطط دولة الإمارات للاستثمار في الولايات
A
المتحدة
testament to this is the UAE's plan to invest
من خلال المؤسسات
in the
الاستثمارية
US
الإماراتية
in these sectors,
وبقيمة
through the UAE's investment bodies at a total value of $1.4 trillion over the next 10 years.
كما أن هناك شراكات ومشروعات مهمة
Additionally,
في هذا المجال
major partnerships and projects are underway between private sector entities
هناك تعاون استراتيجي
in both
في مجال
nations.
الفضاء مثل ما شفت سماحة الرئيس. والولايات المتحدة
Beyond
شريك
these
استراتيجي
areas,
لدولة الإمارات
our countries
في مشروع
maintain
استكشاف المريخ.
a strategic partnership in the field of space
وبرنامج
exploration
رواد الفضاء ومشروع استكشاف
and
حزام
the astronaut
الكوكبات.
program and the
وفي هذا
asteroid
السياق
belt mission.
أريد أن أذكر شيء
In
ربما
this
لا يعرف
context,
الكثير.
I would like to share something
وهو
that may
أن
not
مركبة
be
الفضاء
widely known.
الأمريكية أبولو 17
The American spacecraft Apollo
التي
17
انطلقت سنة 1972 أخذت علم
that
دولة
flew in
الإمارات في
1973
رحلتها إلى القمر.
has carried the UAE flag on
وهذا
its
العلم
journey
نفسه
to the moon.
أرسلته وكالة الفضاء
That same flag
ناسا
was
إلى
later sent by
المؤسس
NASA
الوالد
to
الشيخ
our
زايد
nation's
رحمة الله عليه.
founding father, the late
عام
Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, in 1973,
قطعة
along
من
with
صخور القمر.
a fragment of lunar rock.
والتقى الشيخ زايد رحمة الله عليه مع رواد رحلة أبولو
Sheikh
عدة مرات.
Zayed met with
حيث
Apollo
كان لديه
astronauts
طموح كبير
on
بالوصول
several occasions,
إلى الفضاء.
and he had a deep and enduring mission for the
في مارس
UAE
الماضي
to reach space.
قلتم فخامة الرئيس أن
Mr.
دولة
President,
الإمارات والولايات
in March
المتحدة
of this year, you
كانتا
stated
على
that the
الدوام
UAE
شريكين
and the United States
استراتيجيين
have long been
في
partners
دعم
in
جهود
efforts
السلام والأمن
to bring
في
peace
الشرق
and
الأوسط
security to the Middle
والعالم.
East and the world.
واليوم
Today,
أجدد التأكيد
I
لكم
reaffirm to you
أن دولة الإمارات
that the UAE
حريصة على
remains
مواصلة
committed
العمل
to
مع الولايات
working
المتحدة
with the United States
في كل ما يحقق السلام والاستقرار
to advance
في
peace
منطقتنا
and stability
والعالم.
in our region and globally.
أكرر الترحيب بكم فخامة الرئيس.
Once again, Mr.
وأنا
President, I
واثق
warmly welcome you, and I'm
بأن هذه
confident
الزيارة
that this
سيكون
visit will have a
لها
profound
تأثير كبير جدا في
and
مستقبل
positive
البلدين.
impact on the future
حياك الله يسلمك.
of our bilateral relations. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Your Highness. What a lot of people don't know, I think my staff is very surprised by it. You and I have been friends for a long time. We've been good friends. And what they don't know about you is that you are considered a truly great warrior. And you've been through the wars. You're a great warrior, a very strong man, a brilliant man, a man of vision, like few others, and highly respected. When they know you, there's tremendous respect, and you're so respected in the Middle East that it's really amazing. You know, we've done the tour with two of your very good friends, you know that. And we were talking about you, and I won't tell you everything they said, but I can say it was all good. It was all good. Total admiration and respect for what you've done and who you are. And they said, when he gives you a handshake, when he makes a deal, that's the deal. And your wonderful brother came to Washington a few weeks ago, and he told us about your generous statement as to the 1.4 trillion. And all I could say is thank you very much. We will work very hard to deserve it. I have absolutely no doubt that the relationship will only get bigger and better. Your relationship and mine can't get better, so I can't say it's going to get better because it's at the highest level it can be. But our countries will work together. We've become a very hot country. We were not such a hot country 6 months ago. And now I think we're the hottest country, if you want to know the truth. We had one little indication. A year ago, we were having a hard time getting people to join the military, enlistment they call it in our country. We were getting very bad vibes, very unhappy. It was an unhappy country. foolish things were happening, stupid things were happening. And we just got the numbers. We had the highest enlistment numbers just about that we've ever had. We think it probably the highest, but they say have to be extremely accurate when it comes to the news, because they check every word I say. If there's a little bit of an inaccuracy, but I will tell you, we had just about the best numbers for enlistment we've ever had. Every one of our services. I'm very proud of Space Force because I created Space Force. That was my baby. Hadn't been done in 78 years, a new force, and it's doing phenomenally well. We were not winning the space war, and now we're leading it by tremendous margins over Russia and China primarily. And so we're very proud of it, but I'm very proud of, maybe even more so, the enlistment numbers. So we went from having a hard time getting people to join our armed forces and our police, by the way, to having the best numbers that we've ever had, wanting to join. They're proud of our country again. That's a big thing, and to happen so fast, over about a 6 or 7 month period, that's a big honor. And likewise, the police, very hard to get police, and now the ranks are bursting and with pride. So that's something that we're very happy about. We've had investments in our country over the last 3 months, but really 2 months, because it took me a couple of weeks to get started. I had to get a little acclimated again, because we had a very successful first term, as you know. We had one of the most successful economies in the history of our country. First term was amazing. We did a lot of things. We rebuilt our military. We did a lot of great things. And I think this is even going to be better. But we have now, I think, substantially over $10 trillion of investment. And now when I add the $1.4 trillion, we easily break that number. So that's investment or investment that we think will soon happen. And it doesn't include people that are building, because not everybody comes and tells us that they're building, and it's a big country, but we're having numbers that we've never done before, and that means AI plants. That means, as an example, a really good example is Apple. Apple is now spending much more than $500 billion on plants. They didn't do that before. As you know, they built their plants in another location. We have the biggest computer company, $500 billion. We have Mr. Wei of Taiwan is spending $200 billion. Jensen who's great. Jensen Huang is spending $500 billion. We have numbers that nobody's ever seen before. That all means jobs, because to me, the most important jobs, I want jobs. And we have costs are way down. Groceries, we have a term, grocery. It's an old term, but it means basically what you're buying in food. It's a pretty accurate term, but it's an old-fashioned sound. But groceries are down, costs are down, eggs are down. They were, first week they were hitting me with eggs were up 200%, and now they're down to a number that is amazing. We're down 97, 98% from where they were. And everybody, they said, you won't have eggs for Easter. Well, we had everybody had eggs for Easter at a very reasonable price. At the White House, we had our little Easter egg roll, and we had hundreds of thousands of eggs purchased. They said, you have to go out and buy plastic eggs. That didn't work out. So we've done a real job, and our energy costs are way down. The energy is way down, gasoline is down, and we have almost no inflation. So we've got the economy back. We've got a border now that's very powerful, 99.9%, and nobody would have believed that was possible. It was a real mess. We had, frankly, an incompetent previous administration. I know you weren't thrilled with them. They abandoned people, and it wasn't that they abandoned. They didn't bother to call people back. They treated people with great disrespect, but part of it was a level of stupidity that we've never seen before. And I'm glad we arrived, and I know people also woo you. You're an amazing country. You're a rich country. You can have your choice, but I know you'll never leave my side. I know that. And you know the special relationship that we have and our country has. So our country's back with you, and our country's back in a lot of ways. We have a country with tremendous spirit right now, tremendous. They haven't seen anything like it. I would say this, we're far ahead of schedule. If you would have told me these numbers in a year and a half from now, I would have been very happy with them. But think that substantially more than $10 trillion, you'll have numbers of other presidents where they won't do $1 trillion in a long time, $1 trillion. We did it in 2 months because, again, you figure 3, but let me have 1 month of fixing up the Oval Office, in other words, getting things ready. And I look forward to having you in the White House. We'll celebrate together. But we are going to be your friend and we're going to be your partner, and we really appreciate your confidence and an investment. That's your biggest investment that you've ever made, and we really appreciate it, and we're going to treat you very, as you should be, magnificently. And you're a magnificent man, and it's an honor to be with you.
My honor, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. شكرا شباب. دخل وسام.
نستأذن سموكم بالبدء. Your Highness, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, in recognition of President Donald Trump's exceptional efforts to strengthen the long-standing ties of friendship and strategic partnership between the United Arab Emirates and United States of America, I am honored to announce that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan bestows the Order of Zayed upon President Trump.
Will you give me the honor?
Thank you.
Excuse me, everyone, please.
All right, guys, there you have it. President Trump meeting with the UAE president. The UAE president stating that the relationship with America, rather, has strengthened since Trump became president. The goal of the UAE leaders, by the way, is to make their nation a global leader in artificial intelligence, with Trump assisting with that by allowing the UAE to now import some 500,000 AI chips per year, starting this year. That's what's happening in the UAE. Let's go ahead and take it full screen, if we will, of the top box on your right-hand side. We know that earlier today, the Trump administration argued birthright citizenship in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll take a listen into there, and yet again, we are awaiting Maryland Governor Wes Moore, along with Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown, to make a major announcement. When that happens, we'll take you there.
Other side without the presumption that this was blatantly unconstitutional. The Seattle judge said, I haven't even read your briefs or heard your argument. I've already signed the injunctive order because I don't need to. He wasn't even willing to listen to the very significant historical record and prior precedent to the contrary. That's a real problem for the rule of law, and to get a little more percolation on that from the lower courts, I think would be of help to the Supreme Court when they do finally confront the merits.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right, guys, yet again, attorney speaking outside of the U.S. Supreme Court at issue birthright citizenship. We know that argument taking place before the U.S. Supreme Court earlier today, something that has quite honestly been on the minds of many Americans for quite some time. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see that right there. We are awaiting Maryland Governor Wes Moore, along with Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown, to make their way into the room that you see right there. We were told earlier today that the governor and the attorney general have a major announcement. What that announcement is, we have yet to be made privy to, but we're pretty sure any minute now we'll get a chance to find out exactly what the Maryland governor has to say. We'll take that full screen and we'll get back to you shortly. You are watching the Fox 5 Live Zone. Well, earlier this month, almost 200 people were arrested by ICE agents in the D.C. area. In addition, 100 local businesses have received inspection notices, many of them restaurants, as the White House continues to search for migrants in the country illegally. Joining us now to discuss the latest developments, we welcome longtime immigration attorney and founder of immigration law firm USA for All, Renata Castro, joining us yet again on the Live Zone. Good to see you, Renata. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's jump right into this. In short, how and why in the heck is this happening?
Well, I think that as you have, we spoke about this very same subject about a week ago on the intense scrutiny that employees in the DC restaurant industry are being subjected to as the Trump administration focuses on detaining those individuals who are in the country without status. But we haven't heard business owners, American citizens who hire these individuals in violation of the law be punished. But I want to make something very clear. Restaurants in the United States have historically heavily relied on an immigrant workforce simply because they cannot find people who are ready, willing, and available to work. So it's time that instead of having these mass detentions and just creating panic and a possibility of higher food costs in the restaurant industry, that the Trump administration comes to the table to discuss a problem that not only the restaurant industry has, but most American employers have, which is to find people who are interested in doing jobs that are boring, but which sustain our economy.
Yeah, it's really interesting. To your point, this has really been ramped up over the last several weeks. And with that being said, a lot of migrants are probably stating, hey, what should I do if approached by an ICE agent?
If you're approached by an ICE agent, if you are in a public venue, unfortunately, you cannot avoid that approach. You cannot demand a warrant. But if you are in your residence, or if a business owner is subjected to a raid, they can demand a judicial warrant. Now, if you're a migrant and ICE starts questioning you, do not answer anything until you're in the presence of your attorney. Now, restaurant owners are particularly concerned with rising food costs and now with this direct attack on their livelihood, will this be the end of many historic restaurants in the United States simply because they cannot deal with costs?
We know as we speak, birthright citizenship is being argued within the Supreme Court, but we also know that pretty soon, well, a lot of folks will argue the legality, if you will, of these kind of sweeps. What say you to all of this?
I think it's very unlikely that the Supreme Court will end birthright citizenship by agreeing with the executive order. There is a legal way to end birthright citizenship, and that's through the legislative process. So both the House and the Senate would have to pass an amendment to the American Constitution to change this. Now, when it comes to these raids, the United States government has been working hard to find loopholes in the law to attack job-creating business owners in the United States. But little to nothing has been said on how to resolve this conundrum. American businesses need people to work. What do they do in the meantime? So I think that many business owners who supported the Trump administration in their campaign are going to turn their back to the president now that they're feeling the pinch in the attacks of their campaign promises in a much broader spectrum than many of them expected.
That will be very interesting if that happens. Speaking of if that happens, the question is, what if it gets even worse, and will it get even worse?
I believe it will get worse, yes. And I think that there is a financial interest. If you look at the stocks for the private immigration detention operators, the Geo Group and CITIZENSHIP, their profits are through the roof. Now, when you look at the military contractors that are seeing these immigration raids as a financial opportunity to expand their contracting abilities, now you will likely see a lot of big players looking at immigration enforcement as a get-rich scheme for themselves. Now, the population is going to have to ask themselves, is this really what we want in the United States? Is detaining waiters and people who are tax-paying individuals who are working hard, who serve us in the United States, really what's going to make America safer and more prosperous? I think many of us are saying no to that question.
Yeah, and as we wrap up, Renata, I got to tell you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, I've seen these raids take place here locally, here in the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area. Am I correct about that? Is this spanning throughout the country or only happening right here in our immediate area?
Not surprisingly, we have seen these raids happen in some strongholds that are more progressive than others. If you look at the immigration courts in Maryland and Virginia, they actually have a very high rate of approval of asylum cases as opposed to some jurisdictions like Florida and Georgia. In Georgia, you have immigration courts denying almost 100% of the asylum petitions in front of those immigration judges. So Massachusetts has been hit very hard with some of these immigration raids. So they're being very targeted. Massachusetts, we know the Boston mayor has taken a strong position against the Trump administration. We surprisingly have not heard much in the Chicago, Illinois area, but I still cannot press why D.C., Maryland, and Virginia are being subjected to these raids. But I guess that in true Trump fashion, we will soon know why the government has taken a strong position. Other than for logistical reasons, there's just more ICE agents in government operations there. But I'm sure that there's something more to the story that we will soon find out.
And I think a lot of folks would also argue it happens to be in proximity to the White House. Really interesting. Yet again, we have been speaking with longtime immigration attorney and founder of immigration law firm USA for All, Renata Castro, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, Renata.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone, you are taking a live look at the Maryland State House in Annapolis, where any minute now, Maryland Governor Wes Moore will be joined with Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown to make a major announcement. What that announcement is, we have yet to be made privy to, and we should find that out very shortly, yet again, when Maryland Governor Wes Moore and Attorney General Anthony Brown make their way into the room right there at the Maryland State House. In the meantime, let's get a look at weather. And with that, we say, hey, Tucker Barnes. Tucker Barnes joining us right here on the Live Zone.
Yeah, I mean, why not get married today, right?
Yeah, I like the weather. I thought it was great today.
Yeah.
So far.
And it's going to get better this afternoon.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, they do quickie weddings. We did a story about this yesterday. Quickie weddings like in Fredericksburg or something. I can't remember where it is.
Well, as long as the quickie part is only the wedding.
It's his show. Compliments, complaints, you know where to find him. All right, humid and a pop-up storm or two this afternoon. But if you're getting married outdoors later today or just want to do a walk around your neighborhood, lunch outdoors, you can do it. I do want to mention the humidity. So, you know, if your hair is subject to the frills of, you know, lots of water in the atmosphere, you're going to have to deal with that. But otherwise, nice afternoon. Should be about 80. Rain chances are at a minimum later this afternoon. So we can finally get a chance to kind of dry out, and that's great news. 70 now in Washington. Dulles too. We are, and that's a live shot down at National Harbor. You can see we've got some clouds out there, but we've also had some sunshine, and we should trend towards even more sunshine later this afternoon. Kind of a partly sunny day. If you look carefully there at your satellite and your radar, you can see some breaks in the clouds, and that'll be the story later today. So not perfectly sunny, but with a reduced chance of showers and thunderstorms. A decent afternoon. So got plans after work and school, going out this evening for dinner. You'll be in good shape. 80 this afternoon. It'll be kind of warm and muggy overnight. And then we're going to be very warm tomorrow, Guy. We're going to be in the upper 80s.
Oh, wow.
Still have not hit 90 in D.C. in 2025, but we'll come close tomorrow. 88 is going to be the forecast high for the day on Friday. And I'll show you the weekend forecast here coming up. But there's a bigger picture, and nothing really driving showers and or storms later this afternoon. That area low pressure that you see on that map that has been responsible for the heavy rain we've had around here the last couple days. Last night, did you wake up to storms?
No, I didn't.
Well, I did at about 11. Those are a thing of the past. So just one or two pop-up storms, mostly so I don't lose my job later today. you really, your chances of encountering them are at a minimum. And we should be dry tonight. Tomorrow, a couple different chances for showers and storms. Very warm and muggy, upper 80s. Saturday, we're going to get up first half of the day with a cold front coming through, a few showers. And it should clear by early afternoon and become a beautiful afternoon, and then a gorgeous Sunday and Monday. Upper 70s, back to nice early, you know, kind of mid-spring weather.
All right, big weekend plan, so got to make sure that weekend is right, yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get the rain out here early on Saturday.
Okay, good to know.
Thank you.
Tucker Barnes with all things weather right here on the Live Zone. Hey guys, if you haven't already done so, download the Fox local app. That way you can take Tucker with you any and everywhere you go. All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Going to take a quick focus on two of America's governors, both of which may very well end up being presidential contenders during the next election. We'll take you to Florida first, where Governor Ron DeSantis is now discussing all things surrounding agriculture. In just a minute, Maryland Governor Wes Moore is expected to walk into the Maryland State House to make a major announcement. Let's take a listen in to Ron DeSantis.
Available now, and so that led to this being put in the Farm Bill to say, that local governments cannot engage in this fluoride forced medication. So the counties that did it are great, but now that's going to apply statewide once we sign the bill and it formally goes into effect. And it raises a larger issue about, and I think we saw a lot of this with COVID that we had to fight back against. They had certain views. You should wear a mask when you're outside in 95-degree temperatures. No, thank you, but that's what they were saying. They were saying that kids should get a COVID mRNA shot, even though we still don't have data to this day to justify doing that. And so they tried to push a lot of policies on people. And I think what it is I think some of these people, they think that they know better for you than you do for yourself. They think because they have medical training or they have this, that they should just be able to decree how we live our lives. And that proved disastrous during COVID. I mean, a lot of the things they were advocating not only didn't work, they caused a lot of harm. I mean, just think, when we made sure that the schools were open, I got sued by the teachers union saying close the schools. We had all these people, Fauci was saying this is irresponsible and all this stuff. They'd have had these kids locked out for a year and a half. It was up to them. So we fought back against it. And I think this fluoride is a good example, because what they're basically saying is they're ignoring any studies that have shown that there could be issues if you're overexposed to this, particularly for pregnant women and for kids. But they say, well, it's good for your teeth, so we should just force it. And you shouldn't have a choice in that. We certainly now in our society in 2025, we have the ability to deliver fluoride through toothpaste and mouth and all these other things. You don't got to force it and take away people's choices. But the whole crux of the issue is you should be able to make decisions on the basis of informed consent. So you should be able to take information, you should be able to talk to folks, your doctor, your friends, your family, whatever, on any of these issues, and then make an honest judgment about what you think's best for you and your family. Forcing this in the water supply is trying to take that away from people who may want to make a different decision rather than to have this in water. And honestly, this is a much bigger issue. I mean, the fluoride is kind of one touch point, but it's a much larger issue about how some of our physicians treat different patients. There are places in this country where folks are denied medical treatment because they didn't get a flu shot or they didn't get an mRNA COVID booster. I mean, first of all, the COVID boosters, people still get COVID. The idea that is like something that you should have negative consequences because you decide not to is ridiculous. And the flu shot, I was in the Navy, they would force me to take these flu shots. And it's like, honestly, sometimes you have a negative reaction to it, right? And the data on it is not great. It's very underwhelming. And so to say that someone that may need medical attention, that you're not going to treat them because they haven't done this, that is not what informed consent is. That is saying if you don't do what they're telling you to do, you're going to have really serious negative consequences. Well, it's not a free choice at that point. And you even have some pediatricians, they will not take children as patients unless the children get all of these, like the COVID jab. And first of all, CDC put that on the immunization schedule, and we were opposed to it from day one because there wasn't data to support it. We were the first state in the country to recommend against mRNA shots for kids. And people would say, we think it may be harmful for kids. We didn't even need to go into that debate because there was never data showing a benefit to kids. And so if there's no benefit shown through a clinical trial, then how are you even doing this? But that's what it's coming to in this country, where you're penalized for making a choice based on the available information. And I don't think that that's right. I know we extended some of our medical freedom protections this year with some of the legislation that was passed, But honestly, we need to do better in Florida. We need to make sure that parents are able to make choices without suffering consequences for rational decision and choices that they make. But I think this fluoride thing was important. We're leading the way on it. We got kudos from the HHS Secretary, RFK Jr., and I know a lot of people were happy to see that. And I think you're going to see a lot of states that are going to follow suit with that. So we stand for informed consent, and I think that's really, really important. This bill also builds off previous ESG discrimination prohibitions to include protections against discrimination based on certain environmental policies or artificial emission targets. You know, some of this stuff, and obviously it's on the decline with the Trump administration replacing the Biden administration, but it got to the point, you know, we rejected a lot of the Biden highway money, hundreds of millions of dollars, because in order to use it, I had to jump through these DEI hoops and these ESG hoops. They wanted us at the state of Florida to monitor your tailpipe emissions from your vehicles. I ain't doing that. I'm sorry. And so we sent it back to Elon Musk. And Elon is happy to take it. Biden's people, they didn't know how to take it back because no one had ever given up money back. But I think it's really important that we strengthen those ESG protections, and this does do that. And also, for the first time, this bill provides the state with the ability to return solar fields back into agricultural production, which, you know, this solar, look, first of all, I'm not opposed to solar, right? But, like, we shouldn't be doing Green New Deal policies where you're trying to put a thumb on the scale. Environmentally, people act like because there's no carbon emission from a solar panel, there's a lot that goes into producing those panels that they don't want to tell you about. But then what happens? It takes up massive pieces of property. It's not nice to look at, but then it really degrades the property. There's a lot of waste that's created. So I think transitioning some of this stuff back into production, I think that's going to be really, really positive for the state.
All right, yet again, you've been listening to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis speak on all things surrounding agriculture. That's on the bottom right-hand side of your TV screen. We're going to take it to the top left-hand side, where Representative Summer Lee now speaking on Reparations Now resolution, in essence, calling for reparations for all Black Americans. Let's take a listen in.
Shout out the coalition of people who are here. When we think about the efforts that it takes to make anything move in this country, it's never one person, it's never one legislator. It is always a coalition of people who are come together from all over this country, from so many different backgrounds, so many different states and groups. Thank you so much for your work, for your dedication. To the colleagues of mine who have stood with us, who are continuing to stand with us as we fight back against the whitewashing of our history, the obstruction of justice, and the flat-out denial of our voices in Black lives. I am deeply humbled today to be reintroducing the Reparations Now resolution. This resolution was first led by my sister in service, the formidable Cori Bush, who has, thank you. Sister Cori has long sought to repair the injustices that plague our communities, has stood on the front line on intersectional movements, and continues to do that. From whether she's inside of the House of Congress or she's outside, we can always rely on her to stand up and to come back and to stand with us. And to be clear, she and I and we stand here not just as a member and former member of Congress, but of descendants of enslaved ancestors, of people whose labor built this country, whose humanity had been denied for centuries. So we're here to say that there's no more waiting, no more watering down, no more putting justice on layaway. Black folks are owed more than thoughts and prayers. Yeah. And we're owed repair, we're owed restitution, and we're owed justice. We're reintroducing this critical resolution today because contrary to the desperate, defensive, and deeply inaccurate arguments against justice and equity in this country, attacks on equality, Black economic opportunity, Black health, Black wealth, and so much more are not just a ghost of the past, but they are a very present and ongoing legacy that we are living through right now. I saw that our friends at Fox News have already picked this up. They scooped us. And as we know, depending on who picks up a story, there's different framings. And it's always interesting to see what framing they're going to use. So some folks like to frame the debate around reparations as Black folks simply complaining about wrongs done in a distant past to our ancestors that nobody today is guilty of. But we know that's not just ahistorical, it's ignoring the reality of today. On today, we are still living through the effects of the brutal kidnapping and trafficking of Africans and the government-sanctioned system of chattel enslavement that ushered this country into existence. We're living through the effects of a government-sanctioned system of sharecropping that replaced it in lieu of reparations to the freed Black Americans who had nothing but their names, an eviction notice, few legal protections, and nowhere to go. We're still living through the government-sanctioned Jim Crow segregation laws that kept Black Americans from equal or sometimes any access to education, jobs, homes.
And you see what's going on, tremendous investment in our country. And the development you just looked at, AI Plus, is going to be purchased through mostly companies based in the United States. And Jensen was here and the whole group, and I think it's going to be something very special. It's a massive project, and it's going to be bought through the United States largely. And it's an honor to be here. And the last 4 days have been really amazing. I think they've been amazing. But it shows you where our country can go. And I want to thank all of my team, Howard, Scott, everybody. They've done an amazing job. So we'll be leaving tomorrow.
All right, we'll take you now from the president speaking in the UAE to Maryland Governor Wes Moore speaking from the Maryland State House in Annapolis.
Maryland launched an audit into practices of the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. It's the agency that determines the cause and manner of death in certain cases where the opinion of a medical professional is required. Their difficult work helps inform legal proceedings, and it lends clarity to the families of those who've lost a loved one, including those whose death occurred under unexplained or suspicious circumstances. The audit was designed to study the accuracy and the integrity and the precision of determinations made by the Chief Medical Examiner's Office in the state of Maryland. Dr. Jeff Kokuka from Towson University led the independent audit team. They studied 17 years of these case files from 2003 to 2019. And the team examined 87 cases in which an individual died after being restrained in custody. Dr. Kokuka's team compared their independent analysis of these cases against the determination made by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. And this audit is the first of its kind in the nation. It has set the standard for what this type of investigation can and what this type of investigation should look like. And this team worked with sound methodology. They took a deliberative approach. They relied on a thorough review process that emphasized objectivity at every single stage. This had to be done the right way, without prejudice, without ulterior motive, without any hidden agenda. That's what this moment and this work required, and that is exactly what this team delivered. In a few moments, you'll hear from both Dr. Kokuka and Attorney General Brown about what the audit revealed, but I do want to say at the top, the findings of this audit are deeply concerning. Now, it's going to take time to digest a report prepared over the course of 4 years and 2 different administrations. But if there's one takeaway that we've already drawn at this very early stage, it is this. We have to make sure we are continuing to make Maryland a model for public safety and transparency and equal justice under the law, and one is not more important than the other. Now, I do want people to hear me loud and clear. This is not an attack on the many remarkable people in law enforcement. This is about the need to initiate a thorough and systemic review that will help us to create a more just and transparent system. Later in the program, I will discuss the actions that our administration is taking in response to the completion of this audit. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Attorney General Brown to discuss some of the results, and then after, we'll hear from Dr. Kukuka. General Brown.
Thank you, Governor. Let me at the top say that after the presentation by Dr. Kukuka, my presentation, and further remarks by the Governor, we will take questions, and the questions should be limited to the audit and the executive actions that the Governor announces. If there are medical questions, those should be referred to the Maryland Department of Health. So again, good afternoon. The Governor and I are here today, as he mentioned, to announce the results of an audit led by the Office of the Attorney General in consultation with the Governor's office, and I want to commend his team in the Office of Legal Counsel for their work. And it started under our predecessors 4 years ago. And we're also going to, as the Governor mentioned, discuss the actions to be taken for next steps. This audit began after Dr. David Fowler, then Maryland's Chief Medical Examiner in the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, I'll refer to that as OCME, provided testimony in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin. Dr. Fowler's testimony raised profound concerns within the medical community about the independence and objectivity of death determinations made by the OCME. After Dr. Fowler's testimony in 2021, more than 450 medical professionals signed a letter asking Attorney General Frosch to review the death determinations that the OCME issued when Dr. Fowler led the agency. These members of the medical community were concerned that our state's death determination had been tainted by racial or pro-law enforcement bias or were otherwise inconsistent with the standard practices for investigating and certifying in-custody deaths. After completing the audit that we are releasing today, an audit conducted in accordance with the highest standards of professionalism, objectivity, and integrity, we can say, as the Governor mentioned, there are profound concerns, and they are well-founded in the audit. The audit design team of forensic pathologists and social scientists appointed in September of 2021 started by assessing more than 1,300 deaths that were examined by the OCME during Dr. Fowler's tenure from 2003 to 2019. In each of these cases, a person had died when they were in law enforcement custody. In 2023, Governor Moore and I took office and assumed oversight of the audit. Between September of 2022 and March of 2024, the audit team narrowed the cases under review from 1,300 to 87 decedents in multiple counties who died suddenly or unexpectedly around the time they were restrained, often by the police. Our office then hired 12 forensic pathologists. Between August and December of 2024, each of the 87 cases were reviewed by panels of 3 different experts. The audit design team completed their work this year and wrote the final report and recommendation that we are sharing today. The audit report's findings reveal significant discrepancies that demand our attention and response. They suggest medical examiners persistently misclassified restraint-related homicides that occurred in police custody. In 36 of the 87 cases, our expert panel unanimously determined that deaths were homicides where the OCME had previously concluded they were either undetermined, accidental, or natural. In another 5 cases, 2 of 3 independent reviewers determined that the death should have been classified as a homicide. These 41 combined cases show a failure to apply the standard practices of certifying homicides and reveal patterns that are consistent with the possibility of both racial bias and pro-police bias. Our researchers determined that OCME was especially unlikely to classify a death as a homicide if the decedent was black or if they died after being restrained by police. These findings have profound implications across our justice system. They speak to systemic issues rather than individual conduct. We recognize both the gravity of these findings for affected families and communities and the importance of surrounding law enforcement or supporting law enforcement officers who navigate difficult situations while upholding their duty to protect Marylanders. And I want to be clear, labeling a death a homicide by the OCME means a decedent died because of another person's action. It does not mean those actions rose to the level of criminal liability or culpability for those involved in the decedent's death. It does not mean the officers involved can or should be prosecuted. But it does mean the Office of the Attorney General will do whatever is necessary to help the families of those who have lost loved ones get the answers and justice that they deserve. That's why I'm announcing that starting today, the Office of the Attorney General has launched a hotline that families can write to or call for additional information if they believe their loved one is impacted by this audit. To any Marylander grieving someone who is mentioned in our report, we are here for you and we support you. These findings are troubling, but this report does not suggest intentional or malicious conduct on the part of any Maryland medical examiner. Implicit biases run throughout our system of justice, not just in Maryland, but across the United States. Throughout our country, there are racial disparities in arrests, in convictions, and sentencing. We are the first state, as the governor mentioned, the first state in the country to conduct this type of audit. That's because here in Maryland, we're not afraid to examine the ways racial bias makes our justice system less just. That's because here in Maryland, we're not afraid to examine our past, to improve how we do things going forward. This report will be presented tomorrow to the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and other states will be encouraged to perform their own investigations. These audits provide an opportunity not only for justice for those whose loved ones died in police custody, but also pave the way for meaningful change. Based on these findings, we are committed to implementing comprehensive reforms on how medical examinations are conducted, reviewed, and certified, particularly in cases involving police restraint. We will establish guidelines, enhance oversight mechanisms, and training that address implicit bias. And these steps will help ensure that scientific objectivity and human dignity remain at the center of death investigations in Maryland. I want to thank our case manager, who's going to speak next, Dr. Jeff Kakuka, for managing the case reviews. It was an overwhelming task, which you handled superbly. I want to thank the audit design team, Dr. Bill Thompson, Dr. Alfredo Walker, Dr. Michael Freeman, and Dr. Deborah Davis for their tireless commitment to designing the OCM audit and drafting the report. I want to thank the OAG team, Carolyn Quattrocchi, Carrie Williams, Zanita Hurley. Thank you very much for your leadership on this. Tiffany Diamo and Anissa Mahmoud, who supported OCME's work. And again, thank you to our partners in the Governor's Office of Legal Counsel, especially Amanda LaForge and Jessica Williams. And of course, Governor, thank you. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your leadership, without which we would not have gotten this 4-year undertaking across the finish line in terms of the audit and its recommendations. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Kakuka.
Thank you, A.G. Brown. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Jeff Kakuka. I am a professor of psychology and a decision scientist who served as case manager for this audit, meaning I was primarily responsible for the data collection and analysis and for drafting much of our written report. I was also a member of the audit design team, which brought together distinguished international experts in forensic medicine, social science, and research methodology to carefully design a rigorous procedure for this first-of-its-kind audit. Today, it is my pleasure to share more detail about our audit procedure and findings. The 87 cases included in the audit were all cases in which a person died while or soon after being restrained, typically by police. between 2003 and 2019, the period during which Dr. Fowler served as OCME's chief medical examiner. The 87 audit cases included at least one case from 12 of Maryland's 23 counties, as well as 22 cases from Baltimore City. Nearly all of the 87 individuals who died in these cases were men, and nearly 3/4 were people of color. To review the cases, we recruited and thoroughly vetted a panel of 12 highly experienced, board-certified forensic pathologists, to whom we are very grateful. Each case was reviewed by a randomly chosen 3 of those 12 independent reviewers. To ensure the integrity of their reviews, we redacted all sensitive or potentially biasing information from the case files, such as the identity of the decedent, the identities of OCME staff, and OCME's original determinations of cause and manner of death. Also, to examine the possibility of racial bias in OCME's determinations, reviewers made their judgments without knowing the decedent's race, and they could then revise those judgments after seeing the decedent's body, although they rarely did. The main goal of the audit was to gauge the appropriateness of OCME's determinations by comparing them against independent reviewers' unanimous judgments of those same cases. Overall, of the 87 audit cases, there were 44 cases, just over half, for which reviewers unanimously disagreed with OCME's manner of death determination. As A.G. Brown mentioned earlier, those disagreements included 36 deaths that OCME had certified as either accidental, natural, or undetermined, but that all 3 reviewers unanimously believed should have been classified as homicides. Those discrepancies suggest that OCME's practices during the audit's time frame were out of step with national standards for death certification, namely the but-for standard, which states that any death resulting from the actions of another person, regardless of that person's intent, should be classified as a homicide. As a result, it appears that OCME undercounted restraint-related homicides during the audit's time frame. And we also found that they undercounted homicides even more in cases where the decedent was black or was restrained by police, which raises the possibility of racial and pro-police bias. However, these findings come with 2 important caveats. First, the retrospective nature of the audit makes it impossible to know whether racial or pro-police biases truly affected OCME's determinations. Those disparities could instead reflect factors other than bias, which is something we make very clear in our report. Second, I will again stress that a homicide determination does not necessarily imply criminal wrongdoing or liability on the part of the individuals who applied restraint in these cases. Even so, the audit findings reveal areas for improvement in both policing and death investigation practices. And our report concludes with a list of concrete recommendations to reduce preventable deaths, promote social justice, and maximize the quality of death investigations in Maryland. Blazing new trails is never easy, but someone has to lead the way. And we believe that Maryland can and will be that leader in terms of strengthening death investigations across the country. We hope that our rigorous audit procedure will provide a blueprint for other states to conduct similar audits, and that implementing our recommendations will establish Maryland's OCME as a gold standard to which other agencies can aspire. In closing, I'd like to quickly thank Governor Moore, Attorney General Brown, and all of their staff for their support throughout this complex process. And with that, I will turn it back to Governor Moore for some important announcements.
I want to once again thank Dr. Kakuka and General Brown for their comments, for their partnership, for their leadership, and for the remarkable teams that you also both have assembled. This work is not easy, but we are in it together, and we're grateful. Before I'd open up to questions, I'd also like to discuss what the Moore-Miller administration is doing to carry this work forward. Just a few moments ago, I signed an executive order to further cement Maryland as a national leader in accountability and action. There are 3 elements that I want to highlight for you this afternoon. The first, I'm directing the Attorney General to work with states' attorneys to review each case included in this audit and determine if it should be reopened for investigation. The second, I'm directing the Maryland Department of Health to review the recommendations of this audit and to conduct a thorough analysis on implementing these recommendations. In addition, the Department of Health will work with the Medical Examiner's Office to ensure that we stay in line with national best practices and national best standards. And both the Maryland Department of Health and the Office of the Medical Examiner will deliver a report dealing their progress by December 31st of next year. Third, I'm creating a new Maryland Task Force on in-custody restraint-related death investigations. This task force will be the headquarters of our work to reduce the risk of in-custody restraint-related deaths going forward. And just as we've done for every major action that we've taken on public safety and law enforcement, we intend and we will bring everybody to the table. Our new task force will include the following individuals: government officials, including representatives from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner and the Maryland Department of Health, legal professionals, law enforcement, the community and victims advocates, and experts in forensic pathology. In this moment, even in a very, very difficult topic, Maryland is going to take action. These steps outlined in this executive order result from careful and impartial analysis on what exactly is the best path forward. Maryland was the first state in the nation to launch a comprehensive audit on the Office of Chief Medical Examiner, and today we are proud that also will become the first state in the nation to respond to such an audit with swift and targeted action. And I hope that our work will inspire others around the country to take similar steps as we work together to strengthen our system of justice. I do also want to be very clear that this is not an easy topic, that these are not easy conversations. The pain that these families are feeling, it is real. And for many, this is years in the making, some of whom have been screaming for this type of analysis and have been met with silence. We're talking about Marylanders who have lost their lives. We're talking about families that are still grieving. We're talking about members of law enforcement who watch over our people every single day and who are some of the bravest men and women who I know. We still have a lot to process from this report. And I'm not sure if that processing of what this report unveils will ever be fully settled, honestly. But I know this is the start of the conversation and not the end of it. And I hope we can all agree on this, that in Maryland, we will always bring everyone to the table to address the most serious challenges of our time. We do not shy away from the big problems or the big questions. We face them head on. And in Maryland, we will always focus on policies that make us safer and move us closer to the promise of equal justice under law, and you cannot have one without the other. And in Maryland, we will always ensure that law enforcement has the support that they need to get the job done and to keep us safe. This audit represents a snapshot of the past, while this methodological study helps us to inform our work and the future that will be of our making. It's a future that we're building together in partnership. We will continue working closely with our state's attorneys and our public defenders. We'll continue working with our elected leaders and our local activists and advocates. We will continue working with our police officers and the communities that they protect. And again, I cannot say thank you enough to Dr. Kakuka and the Attorney General for your leadership on some really hard topics, and to your team for making today so remarkable and remarkably important. And also, I just want to say thank you to my team, who I know have worked exhaustively to make sure that justice is served. With that, we'll open up to any questions.
I know that you said that this audit isn't an indictment on anyone in the OCME office. However, and I know Dr. Fowler is no longer in the office. Will the state pursue any action? This is a pretty severe oversight.
Yeah, I mean, the actions that we're going to take, as announced by the governor, we are going to look at these 41 cases. We're going to review them. We'll do it in consultation with and partnership with state's attorneys to determine whether or not any of them need to be reopened for investigation. Again, there's no suggestion that anyone is criminally culpable, but it's our responsibility to go through these files beyond the OCME report, beyond the medical and the original forensic examination. We'll look at the entire file, which means engage in law enforcement as well, to make determination what are the next steps. Is there criminal liability or not? So those are the actions that we're focused on based on the findings of this audit.
Attorney General Brown, to follow up on that same point, in terms of the next steps forward, I know you can't prejudge what would happen in terms of criminal liability. Many of these families have been waiting for years. Can you talk about your outreach to them and your expectation setting for them? Are you concerned that some may have false hopes that a homicide classification could lead to accountability that may or may not happen?
So I want to thank my team because we have reached out to the 41 families that we've been discussing today. We've made contact with more than half, and we continue in that effort. Again, that's why I announced the hotline and asked those who have not been reached or are interested in this issue and believe that perhaps their family could be or should be included in this to reach out to us. We are going to use all the resources in the Office of the Attorney General. I have victim witness coordinators and support. We have been clear with the families. We briefed them prior to this press conference. We gave them a similar briefing. In fact, Dr. Kakuka gave the briefing, and I had members of my team there to explain to them not only what was found, but to really emphasize, to manage those expectations, that a homicide determination by the OCME or by this audit team, okay, does not mean criminal liability or culpability. What we assured them of is that we will look at these cases to ensure that justice is done, and that we will certainly report back to them and the public on our findings.
Do any of the additional cases outside of the 87 that you examined, any of those additional cases of in-custody deaths, do any of them warrant additional examinations, additional investigation, and are there any plans to delve into some of those as well?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Dr. Kakuka to better define or describe what is outside of that 87, so you'll have a better understanding.
Thank you. The short answer is no. We have no intention at the moment of looking at cases outside of the 87. Let me briefly explain how we identified the 87 cases that were included in the audit. We requested from OCME, and they graciously provided a list of over 1,300 in-custody deaths that they investigated during Dr. Fowler's tenure. We then perused that list and identified cases in which it appeared that restraint may have played a role in the death. We requested the complete case files for those cases from OCME, which they, again, graciously provided us with everything they have, including photographic documentation and video where appropriate. We then scrutinized those case files to ensure that they involved sudden or unexpected deaths that occurred during or soon after the application of restraint. Those were our inclusion criteria. That's how we identified those 87. So those are what we focused on.
So outside of restraint, the restraint, there's no
I can't speak to that, but we focused on cases involving restraint specifically. Sure, please.
Also, just a reminder of the historical context, right? April of 2021, Derek Chauvin is convicted of murder in the death of George Floyd. And we all saw that on TV. And it involved police restraint by Derek Chauvin. And Dr. Fowler testified to a death determination around excited delirium. So it was the 450 members of the medical community as well as the world that saw that testimony and gasped. And you didn't have to be a medical professional, right, to be in disbelief of that testimony. But that's what caused us, in response to the letter from the medical profession, to focus on those types of cases. Who's managing?
Let's take care in the front here and then we'll go to you. Thank you.
All of it. Yeah, 1,300 we looked at initially under Dr. Fowler's tenure, 2003, 2019, 1,300 down to 87, all under Dr. Fowler's tenure.
How is the new task force any different from the independent investigations that you guys already did? And won't the task force be doing the same thing that you've already done?
So the task force is going to be much more sort of comprehensive. The audit looked at the autopsies themselves, right? And all the material that a forensic pathologist would use, a medical examiner would rely on to make a determination. That's what they focused on. The task force is going to widen the aperture, right? Because when you think about it, what is the reason for an autopsy? The core primary reason is to identify, as Dr. Kukuka mentioned, preventable deaths, okay? So we start with that, but then we look at larger issues around, the task force would very well look at training for law enforcement on issues around restraint, how to provide information to the medical examiner's office to make sure it's full and complete. So when the medical examiner is doing the autopsy, they've got the information they need. So it's going to be a lot broader than just the autopsy review.
It's a question about how you go forward with this now. Obviously, the standard for determining what you determine may be different than the criminal determination. There's evidence, there's a different evidentiary standard. What tools will be available to you as you pursue this now? DNA? Will you have to exhume these victims? Where do you go with this? What do you have to do?
This is not unlike cases where, after the fact, you go back and review all the evidence that's available, right? So we're looking at the autopsy. We're going to work with state's attorneys. We're going to engage local law enforcement, right? Look at the interviews that they may have taken, the police reports. And from that, we do what any investigator does. You follow the leads. You follow the facts. If there are other witnesses to interview, if there's other physical evidence that is still in the custody of local law enforcement, we'll review that. The same type of investigation that happens anytime you look at a case after the fact, right? So it may be an initial investigation in some of these cases, and I don't know, right? Or it may be a reinvestigation, and it may be no investigation at all, in that we will review the information we have. Some cases may be clear, okay, that there is no criminal culpability. Other cases may require a little bit more digging. Others may require even more.
So this looks back in time. Can people now trust that when these things happen, that it is being handled without such bias and honesty? This looks back at a snapshot of time, someone who no longer works there. I think the problem still exists.
Well, I think even just the time that we've been in these seats, there's already been substantial movement, momentum, and improvements at the at OCME. In addition to having new leadership there, new accountability measures and new structures. And so we're very clear about that time period, and we'll continue doing an examination and bringing justice to what happened during that time period. But from our first moments in these offices, we've already moved to make improvements in OCME, and while those improvements will continue, we also know that the adjustments that have been made have been important and necessary.
Do you believe that these were intentional findings? Was this a cover-up by the medical examiner's office for this period of time?
No, there's no indication. I think it's important. I want to let Dr. Kukuka speak to this. You know, there's an evolution in the science, right? And just so that everyone knows, you've got a JD, a PhD, and a Rhodes Scholar, but there's no MD up here, right? There's an evolution in the science, okay? And different OCMEs across the country use different practices, right? And over time, there's been an effort by the various professional associations to bring uniformity. I think when you speak with most medical examiners, like the public, they'll say accuracy is important, but consistency is paramount. So there's a move in this profession towards consistency as well as accuracy. And there has been an evolution in OCME, and I want Dr. Kukuka to speak to a pretty major, significant development in OCME.
Absolutely. Thank you, A.G. Brown. As the Attorney General mentioned, death investigation, as with any field of science, naturally continues to evolve over time as we learn more, right? And many of our recommendations in our report are not only aimed at making sure that OCME is compliant with national standards, but also making sure that their practices are compliant with the most up-to-date scientific understanding in their field, particularly the dangers of prone weighted restraint, as well as the now discredited concept of excited delirium, which has been the subject of some controversy. It's important to keep in mind, as has been alluded to numerous times, that this audit is looking at a particular historical snapshot, right? The most recent case that was included in this audit was investigated almost 6 years ago, and there has been progress since then. Almost half of the cases in this audit invoked the now discredited concept of excited delirium, which had not been discredited at the time. But since that time, it's been disavowed by numerous medical organizations, including the American Medical Association and the National Association of Medical Examiners. And for that reason, OCME has likewise disavowed that terminology.
Are you releasing the report, and will that have details of each individual case?
The only details of each individual case that would be provided in the report are the original manner of death, OCME's determination, that is, as well as the reviewer's consensus opinion, if applicable.
Will the person's identity be?
Yes. Yes. Appendix B of the report.
And the report is out. Just last question.
I have a question about this, and then about this, working with the state attorney's offices, have you had any conversations with them about, moving forward? Are they on board with this as well?
Yeah, we've had a number of conversations with the state's attorney's office. I think they appreciate the need to ensure that Maryland's system of justice and all the affiliated systems like the OCME and offices and activities that support that, transparency and accountability are important, and we should continue and always look to ways to improve it. And we've also had a conversation about the need to work together, right, under the governor's executive order as we review these cases. As to their opinion about it, I would just ask that you speak to the state's attorneys and they can offer their opinions on an assessment of this.
Some of the other issues in terms of crime, crime specifically, I've been asked about, we had a 16-year-old caught in a fatal crash in Howard County. The office said that was an isolated incident. We know that instances involving juvenile violence really is not an isolated incident. We've had people ask, when is the governor's office going to take action? So what do you say to that?
I'd say I don't speak towards individual cases. I think individual cases and individual investigations are exactly that, so it's not appropriate for me to speak towards that. I would also say that I don't think anyone can look at the work this administration has done since day one and say that we do not take public safety as our #1 priority. I think if you're looking at the fact that Maryland is amongst the nation's leaders in drops in violent crime, if you look at the fact that Maryland is amongst the nation's leaders in drops in everything from auto theft and juvenile crimes, et cetera, like where we literally went 8 straight years of 300+ homicides in Baltimore City. We went 8 straight years of watching the homicide rate nearly double in the state of Maryland. The non-fatal shooting rate did double in the state of Maryland, and the progress that we have seen across the state of Maryland in the past 2.5 years has been absolutely staggering. It's been the necessity of a lot of groups to be involved in that, to include local law enforcement, to include our state's attorneys, to include our public defenders, to include the Office of the Attorney General, to include our state, to include community groups, to include city halls and county executive rooms all across the state of Maryland. And while we know that we still have more work to do, we're incredibly proud of the progress that we've continued to make, both in terms of juveniles and adults, to understand and underscore the fact that we demand and we expect for our communities to be safe. Thank you so much.
Another question. The bond rating that came out, we haven't had a chance to ask about that because of the earlier.
Sorry,
the bond rating?
Oh, yeah.
DC has gone through this as well.
They did.
Your office described it as a shrunk bond rating. Why did you feel it was necessary to get that message out?
Well, I think it's a slight regional downgrade, because you're absolutely right. Washington, D.C. just went through the same thing, and the irony is, if you look at the language in the report, they're very similar. That the proximity to Washington, D.C. And what is happening with these arbitrary and in some cases illegal federal layoffs, it is having impacts to economies that are closely tied and aligned in Washington, D.C., and it's the reason that we've had such a push on making sure we're emphasizing economic growth. It's the reason we've had a push on ensuring that we are diversifying our economy off of Washington, D.C. If you look at what happened in this last budget alone, we have around $2.5 billion worth of cuts. It's the largest amount of cuts that a Maryland budget has had in 16 years, that we turned a structural deficit into a surplus, that we have 8% within our rainy day fund, which is above the recommended amount, that we are finally watching economic activity grow in the state of Maryland. New business starts are actually up in the state of Maryland, that we're seeing our unemployment rate is amongst the lowest unemployment rates in the entire country. We have added more jobs in the first 2 years of this administration than the previous administration added in 8. So we're very proud of the progress that we've continued to make, but it is just, and while we have disagreements with some of the methodology that Moody's might have selected, and maybe some of the others might think differently from Moody's as well, to be honest, it is very clear that the impact of the Trump administration, that the impact it is having on the DC region and on Maryland, by extension, is real and it is severe. But I know that even in this moment of economic crisis that the White House and Washington is inspiring, that the progress that we're making in the state of Maryland, despite that, is important, and we will continue making that progress, making sure we can have balanced budgets and still give a tax cut to middle-class families. That is our priority.
Thank you.